Hi, get out of the way, please.
Everyone stay back there. Now stay back.
Get someone to stop this thing.
I can handle it.
Of the humanity.
Hi, and welcome to Ward 13, where Paul, I'm doing a Chris Herbert. I'm looking at myself, or am I? I'm supposed to have a guest tonight. She demurred, and Glenn R.J. Ouellette, the People's Mayor, is supposed to join me, and so is Ross Terrio. So, Glenn, where are you? We all know the fun we can have when I'm just on by myself. Hey, I haven't read the Union Leader today. Maybe while we're waiting for Glenn, I can look up today's headlines. I was just telling, we have a new director, Paul Cormier. He's never seen my, I guess you'd call it notorious, Every Which Way But Loose introduction. That's the one where the FBI's looking for an ex-mayor. We won't go into anything more than that. Oh, boy, this is going to be interesting. Hey, hey, Paul, if you've got a chance, there's something on that thumb drive called Terrence McKenna or something.
By the way, the ending was already uploaded, John.
It was?
Yeah. Hasslinger?
Oh, Hashslinger. It's the story of, that's one of our
That's
new
the
shows.
ending you wanted, though, right?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the new shows, Paul, that deals with, it's a restaurateur who goes on to the U.S. Senate.
Okay, but that's how you want to end the show later, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We
Okay.
want
Very
people to know what's coming
Okay, your
up.
guest is coming in right now.
Oh, well, which one are we going to have? Like Karnak. Glenn R.J. Olette. No, Karnak,
Yeah.
I'm not. Ross Terrio, you saved me from going over and starting to read the Union Leader.
Would you do that?
I'd do anything
When
to
you were
save
doing that
myself.
Karnak impression, your head swelled. Like, remember the Martian on Bugs Bunny?
I actually knew that Martian.
Yeah,
and I'm
well,
not going to
your
let
head
you get away
swells.
with it. I'm going to put this down now because it doesn't look good. Okay.
Oh, we're going to do
Russ.
another stream of consciousness show? Strangely enough, you know,
Strangely
still,
enough.
small engine repair. I was
Yes.
in, he goes, I know you. He goes, you were with John Hopwood. He goes, you're giving him a hard time. He goes, keep up the good work.
I patronized the place.
You do?
Yeah.
So you're a patronizing person. Condescending,
Always,
patronizing.
Always.
You know how, like, pedagogue can have a good meaning and a bad meaning. Patronizing can have a good meaning and a bad meaning, too.
That's why I prefer to use words that have their origin in Greece rather than Rome. Because the Romans were so duplicitous, they gave us our current form of republican government. I prefer, a government of, what would you call it? The punditocracy?
Oh, yeah, but in Greece, I thought, didn't you have to be a male landowner to be able to vote?
You know what? I forget that you're better educated than most of my guests. Yeah.
But I actually read democracy comes from the demes or
The
demos.
demos.
And it was kind of interesting how they'd vote. They'd have a bucket, and they'd put stones in it, and whoever got the more stones.
I thought that was who gets executed in Rome. The black marble.
I thought that the demos, when they were voting, that everybody would get a rock, one vote, and they would put it in what they wanted to happen.
You sure, my biblical knowledge is basically based on the Ten Commandments.
I thought you were going to say Sodom and Gomorrah.
That was a movie, too, but I never did see it. I was too young. But I think it came to the Strand.
Really?
Were you up here when we had the Dirty Grindhouse? The Strand Theater was a grindhouse.
What's a grindhouse?
Well, grindhouse shows
X-rated movie?
Z
Oh.
movies,
What?
not just
What?
B movies. Quentin Tarantino, the director, he would be a grindhouse aficionado.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
they
like
would.
From Dusk to Dawn. Remember the vampires?
Oh, that's classic grindhouse.
Ah, that's a
there.
good movie. Remember with
It's
George Clooney and there's a couple of big stars. in
Harvey
that.
Keitel,
Harvey Keitel.
who was superb in The Bad Lieutenant.
Harvey Keitel was a minister in that movie, right?
Yes, he was.
And the girl, who's the famous?
It was. We have an Every Which Way But Loose connection with that movie.
Great movie. I enjoy. And then
Paul, what's our Every Which Way But Loose connection with?
The great Jeffrey Lewis.
That's right.
who's Jeffrey Lewis?
Jeffrey Lewis was a great character actor. He was in.
He was
a
in
lot of-
From Dusk to Dawn.
No, but his daughter was.
Juliette Lewis.
Yes.
She was. Yeah, she was in Prince of Tides, wasn't she? Wait, no.
The Prince of Tides is not a movie I would normally see.
She was in What's that? It was a movie about
The
murder.
remake of Cape Fear.
Yes,
Scorsese's
Cape Fear. I'm sorry, Cape Fear. That's what I'm thinking.
She got an Oscar nomination.
She was in Cape Fear. She was also in that movie with Woody Harrelson where there were two killers.
Right, Oliver
Born killer.
Natural
Oliver
born
Stone.
killers. Yeah, it's almost like the voice of God coming like.
with Rodney Dangerfield. Hey, when we're talking about Jeffrey Lewis,
But Juliet, she's cute. But she wasn't From Dusk to Dawn. Great movie. And it's probably the first time I ever saw a beautiful Mexican actress. What's her name?
she's half
She's half Arab.
she's half Arab,
Lebanese.
and she's one of my screensavers.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Oh, I got
What's
it
her
right
name?
on here.
Selma
Salma Hayek.
Beautiful woman. She was.
Yeah.
Do you remember the bikini
Wow,
episode?
but Ross, aren't you running for office?
Yes.
Aren't you a member of the school board?
Yes.
Didn't you just come from a school board meeting?
Yes.
And we're going to talk about a movie where the bar's name is something we can't even repeat.
Yeah, but I mean,
here.
she was a beautiful woman, and she's in. It's rated G. It's PG-13.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It can't be.
There was no nudity in that movie.
You sure?
She was in
There's
a
a lot of violence.
a lot of violence. Yeah.
Yeah, her name was something Sardonica. Which is-
Satanico Pandemonium, something.
Is that it?
Some Satanico Pandemonium.
A classic grindhouse.
She was a vampire.
A classic grindhouse picture would be Dr. Sardonicus, which was a William Castle film.
I don't know the movie, but remember the very end of From Dusk Till Dawn, it's the back of an Aztec temple. So the front is a bar, and the back is an Aztec temple.
Is that the reason that you went to Brazil to find yourself?
My
You
wife-
could have saved money and just gone to Mexico,
Oh, my wife's Brazilian.
right?
I met her in
That-
Boston. Boston has a huge Brazilian community. It's like 100,000 Brazilians in Boston. That's where I met my wife. I just go to
Oh,
Brazil to visit my
Somerville,
in-laws.
there's a lot of.
That's where we
Yeah.
got married. That's where she's from, Somerville.
Yeah, I
or,
go.
or as people in Boston call it, Slummerville.
Well, they used to call it. They used to be
Now it's all yuppie and
Italians,
gentrified.
Irish that were really. They beat the hell out of you. You know,
Oh,
there's no
yes.
white privilege down there,
No.
except maybe the only white privilege was if you had a good pair of kids and could get out.
Oh, it's like South
Outrun
Boston.
somebody.
Remember,
Let's not talk about
not Whitey
South
Bulger, but his brother, James Bulger. He said, "Come to South Boston."
Whitey Bulger is James Bulger.
What's his brother's name? William Bulger. Billy Bulger.
Billy Bulger.
Who ran the Senate. He used to say, "Come to South Boston for a beer and a beating."
Yeah, let's not. Though, you know, the Irish, you can look just like them, and you know they're going to give you a trimming, just not even for particularly doing anything
Yeah.
good. You know, that's why.
Equal opportunity.
Yes, but
My parents were from Dorchester, the next town over, next section of Boston over.
I know Dorchester used to be a slum itself.
Yeah, working class.
Well, it used to be worse.
Yeah, it was pretty slummy.
Went down.
It's gotten better. It's gentrified.
They threw the JFK library in there, and that helped bring property values up.
But there was right beside the JFK library. There's projects, or at least they used to be. They were
Well,
pretty
they used
bad
to be.
projects. They were bad projects too.
Oh, Dorchester was
I,
pretty bad. That's where Mark
Wahlberg, Mark Wahlberg
Yeah,
is from
grew up.
Dorchester. Yeah,
and he was a thug when he was a kid, because that's what came out of those
he
projects.
got arrested.
Yeah, well, he admits he was a thug. But, you know, you come out of those projects, you're not going to be little Lord Fauntleroy. But Jeffrey Lewis, have you ever seen the great Clint Eastwood Western? I was watching one today, but it wasn't that. He paints the town red.
Yes.
The Avenger. Do you remember what it's called? High Plains Drifter.
Yeah. What's the one you'll know?
Jeffrey Lewis is the guy, Stacy, who's coming back, you know, the head of the Outlaws.
Now let me ask you a question. This is my favorite, one of my favorite Clint Eastwood movies. He's got a poncho on. He's got his guns. He walks up to three guys and he says, they start laughing at him. They say, "Go away, bad boy." He goes, he goes,
I was watching
he
that
goes, "Are you
today.
laughing at my mule?" He goes, "Because I'm okay with you laughing." He goes, "But if you're laughing at my mule," he wants an apology. And then they start
He
laughing.
doesn't quite say it that way.
Yeah,
And
it's
they're not
great.
laugh-
And then he flicks up his thing and he goes, "Because if you think, because if you're laughing at my
poncho.
mule," and then they get in a gunfight and he kills them all.
Well, it's
What movie is
the
that?
first one of the Dollars trilogy.
Oh, is it for a few dollars more? A fistful of
No,
dollars?
A Fistful of Dollars is the first one. Clint, they thought they were hiring Clint Walker, who was that guy who's 6'6". I think he played Cheyenne. No, he didn't play Cheyenne. He played somebody.
Who was the guy with the lever action?
that
He was
was,
tall too. He was an Olympian, wasn't
Lucas
he?
McKay.
No, the guy that did with the lever action gun.
Chuck Connors.
Chuck Con, he was huge. He must have been about 6'5".
He was 6'6" or 7".
I believe
think.
he was a giant.
He played basketball with the Celtics before they were
Yes.
champions, and with the baseball with the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Big guy.
Yeah, he was a friend of Charlton Heston because he was, Charlton Heston was tall, and he would have
Charlton
Chuck.
Heston? Oh, Charlton. I thought you were
About
talking Charles
6'4".
Bronson. He was short.
But yeah, well, I was watching James Caan was talking about being in El Dorado with John Wayne. He says, well, first of all, I had to put lifts on because he's 5'9", and the Duke was 6'4". Well, when he was young, but he's still probably tall. But Clint was Rawhide. He was in Rawhide, and they needed a star for this movie, Italian movie, but it was made in Spain, and they thought they were getting Clint Walker, but they got Clint Eastwood. They paid him $40,000, and it was when Italians make movies, their crews. He made 3 films with Sergio Leone.
All right. At least it wasn't a Fellini movie. Those things are just, those are horrible.
He was a great director, but we're talking about Grindhouse.
That's
fair
insane.
enough. We're talking about Grindhouse, fair
Yeah.
enough. The
Like, that
first
for a
one
Fistful
was
of
made in
Dollars.
'64, Fistful
All right.
of Dollars. And do you know what great movie that's actually based on?
No.
Kurosawa's Yojimbo, which is a great movie, a samurai film.
You know what I love? Kurosawa's Seven Samurai.
Oh, yeah, that's
which
what-
then was into a cowboy movie. I actually have the black and white. That movie is awesome. Just the
And-
acting and the camera shot. It's a
superb.
masterpiece.
And it's
You know what's based on that? I just found out recently. A Bug's Life. A Bug's Life is based on Seven Samurai. The Pixar Disney.
Yeah.
Did you ever see it?
Oh yeah. But Seven Samurai was originally in Japanese. It was called The Magnificent Seven. So when they made it, they just took the title.
Yeah.
But they bought the rights. But Sergio Leone's producer didn't even bother to pay rights. They made Yojimbo, which later they had a lawsuit because they thought they were just knocking off this cheap Western, and it was only the second Western made by Italians. But they paid Clint $40,000. All Italians, including Fellini, they shoot wild, but they don't use the sound in the final movie. Everything's dubbed. Which, when they use all the actors, there's all actors from all over the world in these movies, and they always dub in later. So they were telling Clint he's figuring this out. Well, we use it as a guide track, and so he insisted that a person that they keep the script and make all the notations, because he threw out most of his dialogue, and then he would improvise a little. And sure enough, when they went to dub the movie later, he was in New York, they had lost the entire guide track, so he used his script. The movie was a great success in Italy, and then they brought him back for a few dollars more, which some people think that's the best one, or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's a great movie too.
Yeah. But
So the first one though, with the gunfight when he laughs at the mule, that's a Fistful of Dollars. That's a
Fistful of
great
Dollars, which is based on
gunfight.
Yojimbo. Then the second one was the first one Lee Van Cleef's in,
Oh,
where they
yeah.
become
The guy with the sharp
allies.
nose.
And Klaus Kinski's in it, and there was this Italian actor.
Oh, who's Chuco? The
No,
dirty
that's
looking.
Good, Bad, and the Ugly. That's Eli Wallach. And so they made the second one, and he got more money. But these movies became huge hits.
Oh, they're
And
still being watched today.
by the time he made The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the first one was 64, 65, 66. He got $250,000, a part of the world gross, and a new Ferrari. And that was a much bigger budget of all the others. And Eli Wallach played Tuco, and he was in
Tuco,
he was the Mexican bandit in The Magnificent Seven.
Right.
And that's really his movie, He's so great in that movie. He won a career Oscar. But Clint said, and then Sergio Leone, by that time he was fed up with Italian crews because they're so unprofessional. I was watching
Who was fed up? Sergio Leone or
Eastwood.
Oh, okay.
He says, like, he's acting in the movie Fistful of Dollars, and he's trying, the serious scene where he's talking to the woman and everything, and the crew is just making jokes. People are playing frisbee because there's no such thing as a quiet set because they don't need it. And he said it was awful, and they were very laissez-faire when it came to safety. Now, he told Eli Wallach about that. You know the scene where they blow that bridge up?
Yeah.
All that stuff came down. He warned Eli, says, let's make them move at 20 feet. You know, they jump into the pit. And still stuff came down on them. But he would not make, Sergio Leone wanted them for Once Upon a Time in the West. Now
With Charles Bronson.
Yeah, with Charles Bronson.
Wait, let me stop you for 1 second. Yeah. I love the beginning. I don't know, I think it's the beginning. Train pulls up.
Oh, yeah.
And the three guys are waiting for the black guy and
Woody
and two
Strode,
guys.
who was in John Ford
And they're
Westerns.
waiting for him, and the train leaves, and there's nobody there. Nobody gets off the train. Like, oh, the guy didn't show up. So the train leaves. He's on the other side. He's playing his harmonica, and they like, and he goes, and they say,
And what's the character's name?
I don't remember. I just know
Harmonica.
it's Charles Bronson. And he goes, oh, we didn't bring a horse for you. He goes, no, you brought too many. And, and he kills him.
Yeah.
Good movie.
They released all three, the spaghetti westerns, in, was it 1967? They were already between 3 and 1 year old, and which is the year that Rawhide ended. I think Rawhide ended in 66. At that time, Clint Eastwood was already the biggest star in Europe, but he'd never made anything in the United States except like Francis the Talking Mule when he was young, or something like
Here's
that.
my favorite, one of my favorite westerns. And
Well,
I'll
let's.
show you.
You can bring that up.
I want to bring it
But-
up now. We're on that genre.
Well, we'll talk about the genre.
Marlon Brando, One-Eyed Jacks.
Great movie.
Underappreciated.
And he directed it.
Great movie. And the director left, and he had to finish it up for the guy.
No, we'll talk about that one.
All right.
Because I was watching that last month.
A great movie.
Now, think about who the director was. If anybody wants to call
The
it,
director
who was the
left.
director that
I heard the
Brando
director
replaced?
quit, and so he had to finish
Who
up
was
the
it?
movie. I don't know.
Stanley Kubrick.
Really?
But he didn't. That's
And
a
you know
sold
what was funny?
story.
So when it was done, the producers, oh, this is a disaster. I think it's a great movie. It's like a non-Western Western. My other favorite movie is Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, which was in the
Right.
90s. Great movie.
But getting back to the trilogy, because then we'll get into those movies. They released in the United States spring, summer, and fall, and then suddenly Clint Eastwood's not only the huge suddenly in America, but he's the biggest star in the world, and he's yet to make an American movie. So Sergio Leone wants him to make Once Upon a Time. He wants him to play harmonica, and he said, what did he say? He was through with the unprofessionalism, but he said, in the first movie it was me, the second movie it's me and Lee Van Cleef, and the third movie it's me, Lee Van Cleef, Eli Wallach. In the fourth movie it's going to be me and the entire Union Cavalry. So he walked away. And
What was-
bad blood between
No,
them.
I only saw the train station scene. What is that movie about?
Some people say it's a great Western, but it's so slowly, glacially paced. I don't like it. man.
What is it about, though? I didn't see
It's
the whole movie.
it's about Sergio Leone being given a potload of money from United Artists because UA, which released his movies, made such a lot of money. And it's about Henry Fonda. That was Sergio Leone's favorite actor, and as you know, it's the other scene is you see the little boy,
Yeah.
and they come for him, and then there's Henry Fonda and his eyes smiling, and he kills the little boy. That's what it was about. That was his favorite actor.
Wow.
And, but I don't know. Have you ever watched the entire movie?
No, I just love that scene where Charles Bronson is playing the harmonica and he kills the three cowboys.
Well, I agree with Clint Eastwood. By the time he made that, his movies were so bloated, and because he said about Leone's pace, which was slowed down. If you ever see the movie Duck, You Sucker, which is
I've never heard of it.
that is Rod Steiger and James Coburn are in Mexico. That one is even slower than Once Upon a Time in the West.
All right. So let's go back to One-Eyed
Well,
Jack.
One-Eyed
What do you-
Jack's a great movie. Stanley Kubrick was hired in 1957 to be the director because they'd seen his first two movies, The Killing, and then the great anti-war movie, Paths of Glory. And he found it impossible to deal with Marlon Brando. It took 2 years to write a script because Marlon was always injecting himself in it. And then Kubrick he fired him, Brando, and he said, I want to make the movie myself, which Kubrick said, well, that's great because he wants to make himself. It didn't reflect badly on me.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to make Lolita, because he owned the rights to the novel Lolita, which he did make in '62. But Kirk Douglas hired him to shoot Spartacus, which is one of the great epics.
Kubrick did
Right.
Scott?
Which was originally directed by Anthony Mann,
Great
who
movie.
was a great director of westerns, Winchester '73. But
Ever heard the term idiot savant?
that's somebody like that can play the piano and everything.
Yeah, they're like genius. It's weird how like you have
I
a
wrote about
certain,
movies.
you have a vein of knowledge. It's extremely in depth. Baseball. That's the other thing with stills. They said John Hopwood. He's like a baseball prodigy when it comes to baseball knowledge.
Up until
In movies,
not as much lately.
old movies.
And I can tell you anything about American history too.
Yeah,
I can
so
actually
yeah.
tell you about it, but I love to put a spin on it.
But then there's the other face of John Hopwood where you have these meltdowns and yell at people and beat us up and
Have I ever
not me,
assaulted you?
but other public officials.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never lifted a finger to anybody.
No, verbal beatdowns.
Well, there's only 2 people that have been let out of a city hall meeting, escorted by police. The person that did me is now the chief of police, Carl Capano.
He
Do you know who
escorted
the
you?
other person was?
No,
He is a well-known hash slinger.
gunslinger.
Hash slinger. You know, hash slinger. Somebody who slings hash. Jimmy Stewart played a hash. Don't you remember? We'll see at the end. I have the thing about there's a new show coming up, Hash Slinger, about a restaurateur that goes to the U.S. Senate.
wait,
That's
Jimmy-
based on.
What movie?
You were talking about it last week.
I know, but what was the movie?
Liberty
again?
Valance, the man who
Liberty-
shot Liberty
okay,
Valance.
Liberty
That's
Valance.
what Liberty Valance, who's Lee Marvin, calls him, Hash Slinger.
Okay, I was so I've never seen Liberty Valance all the way. I've read about it. I've seen pieces of it. I thought it was about a guy who goes to Washington D.C. Right?
That's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
No. They're in a town. There's a bully who's bullying another guy.
You'd call
And
Liberty Valance a bully?
Yeah, and he's bullying somebody.
That's actually, I'm quoting
Okay,
a line.
well, and he,
You call Liberty Valance
but
a
his
man?
friend kills him, and then the guy sticks. Refresh my memory about Liberty
I
Valance.
refuse to. If you want to watch the film, why don't you use your clout as a member of the school board, and we can show people.
You know what? That and 25 cents won't get me a cup of coffee.
You allegedly have lined up the U girls to be
Oh,
on.
hey, speaking of that, are they going to be on here on August 14th?
How do I know? You're
They
the person
were
that's
supposed to
bringing
call
them
you
on.
directly.
But they didn't.
They didn't.
No.
I gave them your cell phone number. Did Garrett call you? Or you
Who's
messaged
Garrett?
Garrett's their mentor, Svengali. What's the guy? Rasputin.
Amanusis? Amanusis?
Rasputin.
Amanusis?
Nobody
Amanusis?
contacted you about them coming on.
No.
Nobody.
If they did, I probably hung up on them. I don't like unsolicited calls in New Hampshire. Everybody's
That was
calling you
not
about
unsolicited.
governor's race, about Congress. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm getting assigned
okay.
no solicitors,
Let's.
politics.
You know what? Because we're on so far away on the political spectrum.
I thought
this
we were
is
talking
like.
about Marlon Brando.
Well, we are, but Paul. Let me interject.
Oh yeah,
politics.
after the show, you should
Right.
see this guy. He's Mr. Liberal
No,
himself.
whatever.
I refeel myself.
This
as
is like
a
cross
cold-hearted,
center fire. What's that
bigot.
show that used to be Crossfire? What was the show about the political spectrum?
Is that the one, the flatulent, where they? I was reading about Robert Duvall on the Joe Kidd, which is one of the only westerns I don't really like with Clint Eastwood. It was directed by John Sturgis, who directed the Magnificent Seven. And there's this beautiful shot he set up, where I guess the cinematographer is William Fraker, and it has to do with Clint coming in, and there's this incredible wind because they're 6,000 feet up. It's the high plains, and New Mexico's 6,000 feet up. I guess Arizona is too, and and I guess Robert Duvall is supposed to be in the scene too. And as Clint's coming up, this incredible. As soon as Clint starts to get into range, Robert Duvall lets out a tremendous bowel blast. And everybody starts laughing. And that ruins the shot. And then Clint's going, what the hell happened? What the hell happened? But yeah, that was Bobby Duvall. He used
Right.
to.
Jeremiah Johnson, another great movie.
That doesn't. That's Robert
Mountain Men.
Redford.
Yeah, but with Mountain Men.
Will Geer, who played George in Of Mice and Men on Broadway.
Steve McQueen. What was that? Not Steve McQueen. Robert Redford. Remember the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
Who was originally supposed to be? It was the original script by the great William Goldman. He won an Oscar for that. I think he won an Oscar also for All the President's Men with Robert Redford. It was originally the script was called The Sundance Kid in Butch Cassidy. You know why?
No.
Because Paul Newman was going to play the Sundance Kid. And who was going to play Butch Cassidy?
Not sure.
Steve McQueen.
Oh.
And then Steve McQueen had a big rivalry with Paul Newman. And this is what happens in Hollywood. You know, Paul's already like the top -- 1 box office star. And Steve's becoming a superstar too. And he wants top billing. But Paul Newman's got top billing. So they're going to have a thing where Steve is first and Paul's second on the poster, and then Paul's name's higher, and Steve wouldn't go for it. Later on, they made the movie, and they only have one scene at the Towering Inferno, and they used that exact same thing, but which made both of them so much money, they both virtually...
Towering Inferno?
Towering Inferno was a great, great hit.
Really? I know it was a big disaster movie. I didn't realize it was
it's a huge box office.
Poseidon
hit.
Adventure.
They made so much money from it. Paul Newman basically retired for 5 years, and Steve McQueen did retire.
Well, he died
for
in
a
80,
while.
though, wasn't it?
Yeah, he came back after made a couple movies. But so then all of a sudden, Jack Lemmon was going to be in it. Then they switched the roles, and then Marlon Brando.
Jack Lemmon was going to be in what?
In Butch Cassidy and the
That would have
Sundance
been a
Kid.
disaster.
Well, Jack Lemmon was a huge box office star.
Let me give you a rule of thumb for movies. You know the guy from Green Acres, the husband?
Eddie Albert, who's
If
a great
he's in a
character
movie,
actor.
it usually sucks.
He's in a lot of classic films.
Well, he's in
Roman
some bad
Holiday,
ones too. Roman Holiday with
Audrey Hepburn. Wow, he's her friend. Eddie Albert was a terrific character actor, but of course you have to make movies to make a living. He also won I think he won the Navy Cross.
Get out of here.
Yeah,
That's the
he
second
ran a
highest
Higgins
honor.
boat at like Iwo Jima
Wow.
or something. He was in the Navy. Damn, something like that.
Amazing. So
But
let me pick your brain on politics. Who's going to win governor this year in New Hampshire?
who gives a damn?
The people, though. Your
We
audience.
were talking about movies.
Oh, that's true.
So, they got Robert Redford because Marlon Brando, they were going to cast him in the movie, but then Marlon Brando wanted to take it over, get rid of Paul Newman, and bring Warren Beatty in or something like that. So finally, they just bring Robert Redford in, who wasn't anybody.
Really? He wasn't, at
No,
the
not
time of that
then.
movie, he wasn't big?
That made him a star, but he didn't become a big star till like 1972 or 3. The Sting was
When's Butch
the
Cassidy
Sting was
and
one of the
Sundance
biggest
Kid?
box office hits, and that made Robert Redford. And because Paul Newman's just basically like in a role that Burt Lancaster or somebody would have played.
Yeah.
But
Rock
but they
Hudson.
both made a boatload of money, and they're all Robert Redford's not dead yet, but everybody I grew up with, except for and we grew up with all the stars except for Kirk Douglas, who's 101 years old, dead.
Amazing.
Yeah.
My other one of my favorite movies is, and this is not Shock or whatever you call it, Grindhouse. For Whom the Bell Tolls. You like that one?
For Who the Tolls Bell?
For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Yeah,
Ava Gardner, right? Is it Ava
Oh, I
Gardner?
thought are you talking about the remake with Mark Harmon or somebody?
No,
and,
no. The original from like
Carol Burnett.
1940 or whatever. With
1943, Sam Wood.
it was
directed by Sam
Ava
Wood.
Gardner and
Paramount.
who's the actor? Cary Grant.
It must have been a Paramount movie because Gary Cooper was in it.
Gary Cooper. Great movie.
And Ingrid Bergman was a great friend of Hemingway. Why is she blonde?
I have no idea.
She's blonde.
Well, she's Spanish in the movie. She should have most likely brown hair. Although there are Spaniards with blue eyes and blonde hair.
Yeah. from
Just not a lot of them.
Is it Catalonia?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they have. My brother was stationed there during, and he said, oh my, there's blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. There's Celts and everything there.
You know,
Yeah, they didn't drive them out.
A little
to
bit of
Ireland.
trivia. There is.
Is this about movies or about?
It's about
the
Spain.
Sununu family.
Spain. They have this Catalan, and who's the people that the sheep herders, the language they speak? Basque. Basque is a non.
Sheep herders.
Oh, Basques.
Yeah, I always say you're racist.
Oh,
on the
it's
show.
not racism.
In California, there's actually a town inland from San Francisco that's full of Basques. Do you know what they raise there?
Sheep.
USOB. Yeah.
So the
They got
Basque
Basque
is,
restaurants,
is,
you know, and they get
is
lamb.
one of the few non-Latin and non-Germanic languages. It's an old language they don't know the origins of. Hungarian's another language that has no connection to Europe. But
Nick
let me
Sweat's
take
wife
that back.
told me about
Basque is like an
Hungarian.
old Celtic language that was never. It's independent. It never got influenced by Latin or German like so many other languages.
If I look this up, you're going to be full of crap.
No. And Hungarian comes from Central Asia because it was spoken
What
by
is-
Huns.
What is the language in Europe that's closer to Hungarian than any other?
Ooh, that's going to be hard. Hungarian.
You wouldn't think about it.
Hungarian.
I was talking about it with who was supposed to be tonight's guest.
You got me stumped.
Last
No idea.
night.
What is it?
I got you stoned?
Hungarian.
That's
I don't,
the next
stumped,
show.
Stumped. Hungarian is a very. It's.
Oh, it's language isolated. Vasconic. It sounds like something you'd put your hair in the
Yeah.
60s, greasy kid stuff.
It's an isolated language that is not influenced by other languages.
It's an extinct Aquitanian language. Now the Lion in Winter with wasn't she Eleanor of Aquitaine?
Oh yeah. So
What's her name?
So basically, from my understanding, is the language.
Oh yeah, it is.
It's a
Aquitaine.
pre-Roman language that didn't. They didn't. You know how the Romans came over, took over
Oh, they're up
Spain
in
and
the
Portugal.
hills.
Yeah. So it took over Spain and Portugal as a colony. And obviously now they speak a Latin-based language, Portuguese or Spanish. But Basque was independent and never was, taken over as a language. Now going back to the Hungarian comment, what's Hungarian related to?
So we're not related to any thing, but for some reason it's very close to Finnish in certain
That doesn't make sense.
dialects.
They're separated. But my understanding with Hungarian is it's a leftover language from when the
Yeah, it's a Uralic
the Khans,
language.
when the Genghis Khan and the Mongols came over.
Finnish is a Uralic language.
Huh.
It's spoken by the people in the Urals. So that's why it's similar to Hungarian.
Strange.
Which isn't similar to any of the languages. Like
In
the
Europe.
Ruthenians are there, and their language is more akin to like Russian, the Slavic
It's
language.
interesting is learning about the Romance language.
We're going to give him a test. I want you to name all the ethnic groups in the former German territories that were taken over by Poland and the Soviet Union. Come on.
The only one I can think of is the Prussians.
But they spoke German.
Yeah.
You can't think of any of the other groups? The Ostrogoths and this Goth and that Goth?
No, but let me talk about something I do know so I can make myself look smart. The Romance language. So the ones we know about are, the big ones: French, Spanish, Portugal, Italian.
Portugal.
Portuguese.
I didn't know Portugal was Portugal.
Sorry.
Portuguese is spoken by your wife.
Yes, it is. Very well.
Does she speak a dialect of Portuguese?
Brazilian Portuguese. So they're a little bit different than European Portuguese.
Is it like what Quebecois French is?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. So different dialect. But some of the lesser known Latin Romance languages, Romansh in Switzerland, Romanian. I didn't know that up until I had a friend who was a Mormon, who was a Mormon missionary, and went to Romania and learned Romanian.
No, you're boring now. You're boring
Sorry.
me, so you're boring
All right,
the audience.
yeah, okay,
We were
sorry.
having this good conversation about movies.
Let's go back
but
to
you didn't
movies
know
so
that,
we don't bore people.
What's your favorite political movie?
I don't know. Name some. Mr. Smith. I don't know. Reds? No, just kidding.
I didn't like. I thought
It wasn't a good movie. Would Dr. Zhivago be considered a political movie?
Only by you.
I love Dr. Zhivago. One
Who
of my
wrote-
favorite movies.
Well, Robert Bolt wrote the screenplay, and he was a communist.
No. The person who wrote that book won the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Robert Bolt.
Boris Pasternak wrote the book.
Boris
Boris Pasternak wrote the book.
Pasternak.
Great book. Although
Boris Leonidovich.
Pasternak.
Boris
And
Leonidovich.
he won the Nobel.
Pasternak.
Oh, the middle name. Sorry.
1958. Do you know who published it?
No, but I know that the Soviet government was very unhappy that he wrote the book.
We were talking about a movie.
I love the movie and the book, but
The movie was
the
written-
movie's
you're
actually
talking about-
better than the book. The movie's because the end of the book stinks.
The book is better than the.
No. The end of the book is dumb. The movie's better. Omar Sharif, because I know you don't like him because he's Middle Eastern and a racist, but he's a great actor. He was great in Lawrence of Arabia, another great movie. Remember the no prisoners scene? No prisoners. Remember that? Omar Sharif was a great actor.
Dr. Zhivago's
A great movie, as was Lawrence of Arabia.
Dr. Zhivago is no way near the class of Lawrence of Arabia, which is a political movie. Robert Bolt wrote the screenplay for both of them.
Really?
Yes,
I
he
think
was a
they're both great movies.
He was a communist, and
Was
Michael
he
Anderson.
blacklisted during the 50s, during
He was
the great...
English.
Oh, so he didn't worry about,
I
like,
think Michael
McCarthy.
Anderson, who wrote the original screenplay, and then they brought Bolt in, was blacklisted. He was an American. I believe he was blacklisted. They gave him an Oscar for his widow many years later. But
Really? I think they're both great movies. Now, Zhivago doesn't have the cinematography of Lawrence of Arabia.
how can it not when
But it's a great movie.
How can it not when Freddie Francis shot them both?
So they're both great movies.
Freddie the one thing about Dr. Zhivago, aside from Julie Christie, is the cinematography, which were both by Freddie Francis.
It's good, but think of, like, the sweeping desert scenes of Lawrence of Arabia. Just great.
Who was originally going to be? It was directed. It was produced by Sam Spiegel, who was Jewish, and of course they had to pretend that it wasn't being produced by Jews, or else they couldn't have filmed it
Really?
in Jordan.
But
who was originally Sam Spiegel's choice to be Lawrence of Arabia?
Well, whoever they got was perfect. I don't know. Who was the
Marlon
original?
Brando.
Oh, that would have been... it's a perfect movie. It's a great movie. And then the guy...
Marlon Brando, because he was in Sam Spiegel produced On the Waterfront, and
Another great movie. That could have been a contender.
and well, actually,
But you were my brother and you didn't support me.
and who replaced Brando? Because Brando wouldn't be in it because he said he didn't want to spend 2 years writing.
Peter
on
O'Toole?
No. The original, the original star of Murder on the Orient Express, not the Johnny Depp. Albert Finney, and he walked off the set.
Bastard.
Yeah, so then they put Peter O'Toole in.
Who was
and-
great.
Yeah, but Peter O'Toole was 6'2", and Lawrence of Arabia was about 5'4".
5'6". Yeah, he was a
five.
little guy.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah, it didn't matter because he was a.
Another great one of my favorite movies is Goodfellas.
We don't talk about that on my show.
Why? It's a great movie.
Because they'll have to whack you.
Do you remember that scene, though, when the Turkish army has committed atrocities, and the Arab army's lined up, and they say, "No prisoners." Remember that? Great scene.
Why does he say that? Why does the guy who's part of Lawrence's bodyguard say that? You
Because
remember?
Talal, who's with him, wants to avenge himself on the Turkish army, so he rides out by himself with the sword.
Right, because they just if you haven't
killed
seen
everybody in
the
his town.
reconstructed movie, they'd cut out where there's like you can see a village and women have been killed, and then they say that Anthony Quinn says after that was his village.
Yeah, and then he rides out by himself, attacks the Turkish army, and they shoot him down dead. Then everybody's upset.
Well, no, they were going to kill them anyways. Remember?
But then they said no prisoners. Then he agrees to the no prisoners comment. And then he screams, "No prisoners, no prisoners."
Do you know that adjusted for
That actually really happened.
Do you know that adjusted for inflation, Dr. Zhivago is the 8th most popular movie in history?
I believe it.
Gone
Great
with the
movie.
Wind is still number 1 because they spent
Some dogs. Heaven's Gate.
Why would-
Ishtar. Yeah, I bet you saw both of them.
I just watched a road movie, which that's based on. Excuse me, it was Freddie Young that shot
All right.
Dr. Zhivago. He won, and I'm sure he won. He won the Oscar for Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. So
He
and
deserved
for Ryan's Daughter, which David Lean reached a summit few directors do, with the two great pictures, Bridge on the River Kwai, and
Another great
then
movie.
one of the great movies. And then some people would have argued that Lawrence of Arabia could be the greatest movie ever. I'd certainly put it in the top three.
Really?
And then he started going downhill. Dr. Zhivago, and then
Chicago was a great movie.
It's a good movie, and Russians will tell you that captures somewhat of what Russians are like. But it was a great novel. See, you've got an ass end too.
No, I love
Read
the
it
novel.
again.
But the problem was the ending was foolish.
How can you say that somebody that lived through something you or I couldn't imagine?
I can imagine. I can imagine anything.
What do you mean the ending? The ending in the movie isn't even the movie in the book.
No, he meets another girl.
And how does he meet the other girl? He
he
comes back to his
apartment wherever it is.
to the house, and that's, you know,
And then
it's about. Do you know what Dr. Zhivago means?
Hey,
You know
John.
What, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
If you want to show that video, you got 5 minutes left. And
Oh no, that's fine.
That's
we
when he
gotta
doesn't
get-
have anything to show.
We got to give him a good tongue lashing over Dr. Zhivago.
Very good. Keep going.
No,
Hey,
Chicago,
I realize
in the
we
book,
could do a
it's
show
been
on
at
it.
least 10 years since I've read the book. By this time, he grows into middle age,
We're not. I don't want.
and he's riding a train, and he has a heart attack. It's a horrible
That's not
ending.
what
It's
that's-
a dumb ending. It's a horrible
That's the
ending.
movie.
No.
That's not the book.
wait a
The
minute.
book ends in World War II, where they're two of the minor characters are talking about Zhivago because they think they've met a woman that could be his daughter.
Oh, okay.
One of the
I
one of
still
the
didn't
Jewish
like the ending in the book.
characters, though. But do you know what Zhivago means, don't you?
No, what?
Жизнь is life. It's Doctor Life. They all love to do that. Russian writers, great writers like Solzhenitsyn. I just reread The Cancer Ward. He gives.
He wrote Gulag Archipelago, right? Gulag
Archipelago, but
yeah.
that's history.
Gulag.
He wrote The Cancer Ward, which probably brought him his Nobel Prize in 1970 with his body of work. But he went through the same thing as
Okay.
Pasternak. But he calls his main character is Kostalgatov. That means the chewer, somebody that's always chewing on something.
So
They
Zhivago
often
means
do that.
life.
Yeah, so he's Dr. Life. It's about a whole life. When you read it, I've read it every 5-10 years since I was 16. It changes every time you read it.
No, it doesn't. It's the same thing. If you read the same book, it's the same
not.
thing.
He's a great writer.
Yeah, your perspective changes.
Yeah, sure. No.
Yeah.
Yes, because he has created such a rich tapestry. He was one of the great poets, Russian poets.
I hate when people use the word tapestry.
But it is.
If it's not a real
That would
tapestry,
be a
you shouldn't
real-
use it.
That would be a real...
Horrible book. Let me give you some horrible books.
We're
that
talking
people-
about movies.
Well,
You just said something about cinematography, that Dr. Zhivago didn't have as good a cinematography as Lawrence of Arabia, but the guy won the Oscar for both of them.
Yeah, so?
Well, it's very hard to shoot snow, and that's one of the reasons he won the Oscar. It's beautifully shot.
Dostoevsky, horrible book. It was an okay book. It's just very boring and slow. Crime and Punishment. Do you agree?
Well, you have to read it in Russian, or a good
I read it in
translation.
English in America. Because that's what we do. We make America
Well,
great
I'll
again.
just say, I wanted to learn Russian so I could read Dostoevsky and Tolstoy in the original.
Did you
Because
like it?
Some people say, it's a very vivid book, but it's the translations. Some people say that he wasn't a good prose stylist, and some people say he is. But how can you tell?
I don't know.
How can you tell?
Did you like Crime and Punishment?
Not really.
Yeah, it was kind of
It's a
dragged.
great book, but it's something I wouldn't reread.
War and Peace, good, two different
Come
stories.
on.
Okay,
Come on, you've read War and Peace.
I have.
The whole book.
I've read the whole
By any
book,
man.
and I've also read The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, which was kind of dry.
And are they going to make that into a movie, Rusteria?
I hope they do.
Do you think Johnny Depp could get out of his financial doldrums by
I'm thinking
headlining
Val
that?
Kilmer.
That
as Adam
has
Smith.
You're giving my bowels
I'm losing my
conniption.
train of thought here. So
When do we play that
Okay.
last
the worst, best.
ending?
All, worst book I've ever written, although it's well written, that I've ever read is James Joyce, Ulysses. What a horrible book that is.
You
horrible
are
book. It's horrible.
You're ridiculous.
It's a horrible book.
There's so that's ridiculous.
It's a stream of consciousness where him and living in Dublin in 19
That's not
whatever.
true.
And it's
All
a
the
couple of
different-
days
all
in
the
his life
different-
of his friends. It's just a horrible book.
No, it takes place on one day.
Yeah, in one day in Dublin, Ireland.
You
in
said
like
that.
19...
You said days. I caught you again.
Oh, sorry. I meant
Dude, it's all. Every chapter is a different style of writing. They're not all.
I
stream
don't.
of
It's a
consciousness.
horrible book. It's just, and it's always usually number one on the greatest books ever
Yeah,
written.
it's one
so
of the
I read
greatest masterpieces ever written.
It's a turd.
That's ridiculous.
It's a horrible book.
You don't know literature.
I do know literature.
No, you
Literature is
don't.
my middle name.
You just said, well, I've never read Zhivago in Russian, and I never could, because even it's too difficult a book to read.
I read it in English.
Yeah, it was well translated, but there's a new translation too.
Doesn't matter. I read
The
it.
poems are untranslatable
not
to
that
English.
good.
You have to read them. You have to listen to them. All Russian poetry rhymes. I was going to read a.
Vesernich Savan, you know that song?
I
It's
was
an
gonna
old
read
Russian
a,
song.
poem-
Evening bells, evening bells.
At the end
That's
of
what it needs to be,
the
yeah.
last mayor's regime, I was going to read the poem
glad you
Hamlet
did.
by.
We only got 3 minutes.
by
You wouldn't have finished it.
Pasternak. How much time do we have?
Read it now.
I don't
You
have
got
it.
5 minutes.
You got 5 minutes. So read
And
it.
that's with the ending.
No, that's just no. You don't have any. If you have, you can play the video right now, or you can keep talking.
He
for
could read
5 minutes.
read Hamlet's poem. It's going to be
I
an
might as well talk. I might as well talk with this.
It's going to be an
knucklehead for
unhappy
another
ending
5
no matter
minutes.
what the ending is, but read Hamlet's poem from Bastardnak.
Ross, you should read the. But it would be like throwing pearls before swine. The Good Doctor, Chekhov.
All the Chekhov
Now-
stuff is bad, I've heard. Worse than James Joyce. He's like a Russian version of James Joyce.
He's nothing like. The only thing I can think that
Did
would
he
be
write-
like
did he
that
write,
is the Dead or Dubliners.
The insane. Name some of his books, Chekhov's. He wrote a bunch of plays, right?
Well, one of his probably his greatest short stories, Doma Sobotchka,
I don't know that one. Say
means
some other stuff.
lady and a small dog,
Okay, I don't give a rat's ass.
or the
Now,
lady
some
with
more.
the pet dog.
Next one.
That's a brilliant story.
Yeah, whatever. Next one. Next Chekhov one.
Cherry Orchard play.
Don't know that one. Next one.
The story I'm translating is Dushenka, which
What does
it's-
that mean?
Could mean psyche. It could mean
No, they have.
soul.
He has some famous stuff that I've heard of, but it's nothing.
Cherry
you're
Orchard,
listing.
the seagull, the plays.
No. That you're listing all obscure stuff. Name some the big stuff.
So you just said that
if
two
you
of the
went to
great,
Barnes and Noble,
two
what
of
would
the
you see for
essential
Chekhov?
plays of the Western canon
I-
you've just taken a dump on.
Yeah.
You don't know literature.
Well, whatever.
You know what we can talk about.
More Chekhov. Give me some more Chekhov titles.
What about Mickey Spillane? I, the Jury.
I know the name. I've never. I don't. I like to read good stuff.
Robert Aldrich made a movie of a Mickey Spillane novel.
Hey, he was very prolific, wasn't he? He wrote crime novels or detective novels.
Mickey Spillane, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you punch a gal in the jaw, you know,
No,
shoot a
very-
communist with your 45. Very, very 50s.
You're gonna read Hamlet from Zhivago?
It's not. No, I'm not, Ross. I did translate it.
You disappointed me. Why don't you read a
Simple.
line? Read a line from it that you remember, just from the top of your head. Stream of consciousness, like Ulysses.
Stream of consciousness. Do you know how long it took Joyce to write Ulysses?
Did you know that James Joyce was having an affair with the Red Baron, von Richthofen?
No, he never had an affair with.
He did. With his, she was married and she left her husband to live with James Joyce. I don't know her name, Frieda von Richthofen or something.
Where did you find that piece of
It's a true story.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah. Why isn't it an Ellman's magisterial biography?
I don't know,
Joyce?
and I've seen a picture of what's his name, James Joyce with the eye patch. Did he? What did he have? A pirate
What
face?
did she? What did Mrs. Van Richthofen? But
Von
did
Richthofen.
Frau Van Richthofen fly a triplane, a Fokker triplane into his
No.
eye?
She was a noblewoman. She had a lot of money.
Where do you get this stuff? Hey, you know, I can't go out for
not?
drinks because I'm parked over near the church,
So?
and the people that are out, I'm afraid they might mug me.
You have nothing to fear but fear itself.
Oh no. Do you know
Is
what?
Sunu going to win another term or what?
Do you know that FDR was the first president to write a mystery novel.
Really?
Yeah, it was called The President's Mystery. But it was probably Robert Sherwood who wrote it.
Do you know
The
L. Ron
Pulitzer
Hubbard
Prize.
wrote a lot of bad science fiction?
Yes, I know him intimately. We communicate through the
Are you a
Pleiadians.
Scientologist?
I try to be. We were getting right back. Jeffrey Lewis was, and with that brilliant ending brought to us from Ross Perot here. What's your name again?
Ross Terrio.
Ross
Close
Terrio.
enough. Ross Perot, close enough.
Ross
Times.
Perot Terrio. We end this with, I'm just flabbergasted, a vicious attack on James Joyce,
Yep.
a vicious attack on the novel
Chekhov.
Pasternak,
Yeah,
and he's taking a
Pasternak.
dump on Chekhov. You've got something against foreigners, don't you?
No, I'm married to a foreigner.
But from the Western Hemisphere.
That's true.
Hey, folks, next week we're going to have Naomi Andrews on, who was a congressional candidate in the 1st District. She was Carol Shea Porter's chief of staff.
She's showing up.
And we're not going to have Ross Terrio here because her favorite writer is Chekhov.
Well, yes. No
yeah.
way.
It's her great uncle twice removed.
Yeah, right.
Great uncle.
Well, she's got a.
Okay.
That's another reason not to vote for her because she's.
We're going
related
to come
to
back in
Chekhov.
2 weeks and we'll
Don't
talk
vote
about
for her.
Tolstoy. We're going to put him
War
to
and
the
peace.
test. Vienna